All right, good morning and welcome to day 69. And actually, this is wrong. This should be Thursday, I guess. Thursday, the 20th of April. I'm going to do a couple things today. I'm going to go over some additional array examples, some of which I've written, one of which I just gleaned from our textbook. And then I'm going to give you an intro to the AWD. Good morning, Grant. I'm just starting up. I said, first of all, there's a mistake on here. Of course, that should say Thursday because that's today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some array examples, some of which I have written and one I just pulled from the author. And then I'm going to give an introduction to the course that many of you are going to take this summer with Mr. Gudmested, that being AWD1111, database-driven website development. Tomorrow will be our lab period with no taping done. Next week, we're going to begin the introduction to React portion of the class. So you're going to learn how to use React. Everyone will. And that's part of what is in the AWD 1111 class. I talked to Mr. Gudmested yesterday and I said, when you went over React, how much time did you spend on it? And he said, the last 2 weeks of class. Well, that'll work out well because that'll be exactly where we are. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be talking every minute of that. Far from it. If I do lecture most days, I'll keep the lectures down to an hour, a couple hours or whatever. Then you'll have time, all right, because I will want you to try to do some of the stuff that we'll be going over again as a class. So what I want to mention first of all is I sent you a folder today that's called Chapter 15 because that was the array stuff. And in there, and I don't want to go through everything that's in here because I don't want to waste your time, but a couple of the things that are in here. All right. This says a list of JavaScript array methods, and I believe there's like 28 of them in here. One of the reasons I grabbed this article is, first of all, it's very exclusive. Well, 20 of them, I guess. It does a good job, and there are examples. These are not every single array method there are, but many of them that are in here are things you have not been exposed to because it's not really in our book, all right? But they're things that you should at least have an understanding of, things like map and filter. I'm not going to run through all 20 of these. All right, but I am going to show you examples of a couple of them in just a couple minutes. That article, like I said, I thought at least was pretty good. There's a couple of other ones that are in here. This is kind of the same type of thing, array methods cheat sheet, etc. So you can look at those if you have the time. All right. I do want to mention, because I'm going to look at an article with you in just a couple minutes. And, you know, I over the last semester or two, I have told people when they go out, they want to learn certain things, different sites they can go to. I mentioned one that I go to is I oftentimes go out to YouTube if I'm trying to either learn or relearn something, and I'll come in there and I'll type in something like Brad Traversy. All right, because he is an online guy. You can buy courses from him, but if you go out to Traversy Media, literally the guy probably has a good 1,000 videos out there on just about anything you can think of. All right, now some of the stuff that's in here, it's real heavy. All right, it's to start. Other things like, look at this, JavaScript crash course for absolute beginners, CSS for absolute beginners, HTML for absolute beginners, etc. But only one more that I wanted to mention, because it's one that I keep getting links from, and I read a lot of their articles, and that is FreeCodeCamp. I think it's freecodecamp.org, but I'm not sure. All right. And again, they've got tons of different stuff on just about anything you can think of. All right. And I don't know if this is the right one or not. There's a codecamp.org, and I think there's a .com as well. All right. But when you start looking at these, it looks like this is the same one. when you go through and you start looking through enough of the stuff that's in here, you're going to find that basically there's going to be certain sites that are always you're going to get links to. Now, the only reason I mention that is down at the bottom here, you'll notice that they talk about there's JavaScript, but for example, this responsive web design, they've got a free course in there. So if you think you needed more than you got in the class, or you wanted some updates or whatever, there's database stuff in here, but they've also got a lot of stuff in here on MERNStack, which is the idea behind the AWD 1111 class. All right. And let me go through, these are examples I wrote. Now I want to show you how things have changed over time. I'm not going to run through all of these examples here, but I'm going to at least look at a couple of them. All right. So when you look here, there's the interface, not real much to it, but at the book we were using at the time, arrays were in chapter 8. So if I click this to run the program, what's going to happen? Well, the program is going to automatically generate an array with 25 numbers in it. All right. And it'll print them out. Then it'll sort them into ascending order. Then it'll sort them into descending order. Then it'll grab the smallest. Then it'll grab the largest. Then it'll grab the sum of all 25 elements. Then it'll divide that by 25 to get the average element. All right. And it may not look like much, but the reason that I put this up, it's twofold. Number one, I forgot I even had it. All right. And I found it this morning when I was looking for something else. But just, all right, different ways that you can write this stuff. So you'll notice in here, no arrow functions like we've been doing. All right. No anonymous functions. These are just written as, quote, regular functions, unquote. When this program runs, I go down to the very bottom. When it runs, it's going to basically call our main function. This is a little funky because of the editor I'm using to look at it. But you can see how really the whole thing is set up, and main is a driver. All it does is call different routines. That's it. With every routine that's in here, I show you how to generate random numbers. All right, I show you how to display those numbers. I show you how to sort them in ascending order and in descending order. This is a little funky right here. All right, if you want a good explanation on that, go out and literally go out to W3 Schools and type in array sort return A minus B. Basically, it's comparing every value and it's flipping them as necessary to put it in ascending order. The one in descending order is exactly the same thing, but it's B minus A instead of A minus B. Now, do you have to do all that? The answer is no. All right. There's other ways that you can do it as well. I just showed a couple of them right in here. Now, when you sort numbers in ascending order, the 0th element would be your smallest. That's not the only way to find the smallest, but it's a way to find the smallest. When you sort in descending order, the 0th element is the largest. And again, there's other ways that you can find the largest. All right. Here we're just adding up all 25 elements. Here we're displaying the average of the 25 elements. So you can see, again, there are multiple different ways of writing this stuff. All right. Now, there's a reason that I'm taking a couple of minutes and telling you this. We're going to get into it in just a second. All right. And then here's another one, and it's pretty much the same program, except what I did was it gives you these 25 numbers, and then rather than just boom, 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 writing routine after routine, it brings up a menu. And it allows you to do whatever you want to do, the same things we had before, but it's put into a menu type of interface. All right, this is very, very simplistic. So again, if I put in a 4, all right, I get those same numbers that you just saw, but they're in descending order. A 3 would put them in ascending order, etc. All right. And I'm just gonna, if I think it's, what is it, a 0 to quit? All right. And if you take a quick look at that, because again, I'm not trying to waste your time here, but if we take a quick look at that, you're going to see that it's virtually the same thing that we had before. The only difference is now, all right, we come up with this menu, and then based on what you did, you call one of those routines. But the routines are exactly the same as they were before. All right. Okay. There's a couple more examples that are in here. I'm not going to run through either one of them except to say this. I'm not going to run this, but if I sit there and bring this up, this is called arrayexamples.js. What you're going to notice is I took this out of a book and made a couple modifications to it. There's things in there like the length method, how to do a pop, how to do a push, how to do a shift and an unshift. All right. And some of the other stuff that you can do in here as well. Again, not a ton of examples, but there's a few that you can take a look at. And then finally, the last one that's in here is a little bit more of the same. I'm not even going to bring that one up, but you've got a few examples that if you choose to, you can take a look at. All right. Now, what else is in here? This is from the book. This is that scores example from chapter 15. So if I bring it up, notice if I come in here and I put in me and I say I got a 78 and I add that, you can see what happened. It both adds it in here and it's keeping a running total. All right. So I'm going to come in here and say Jane Jones, and Jane got 100. All right. So now you can see that. Plus, I can come in here and sort by last name, and you see how it's shifted. That's all I'm going to show you from here. But other than I'm going to just quickly go over the code that's in here with you. All right. And then we'll jump into what I really want to talk about today. All right. So if we look at this, again, I decided to use the authors rather than mine, not because the authors is any better or worse, but just to show you a way of doing things that I really haven't done all that much of. All right, so we've got this display scores, but then notice under our document.ready, what do we, everything's done under a click. This is how we add something. And again, they're using a push. Okay, when you push, it adds something to the end of an array. And I just want to show you this because again, I'm trying to be complete here. But if we come in here and we do this, so if I create an array and I come in here and I say var names equal, and I'm gonna keep it real simple. John, Mary, James, and Betty. All right, there's certain things I can run on this right away. So if I do a names.length, it's going to be equal to 4. That should make sense to everybody. And names 0, or typically names sub-0 is the way you refer to it, is John. Names sub-1 is Mary. Names sub-2 is James. Names sub-3 is Betty. That stuff shouldn't be a surprise. Now, I can come in here and I can type in this. Names dot push. And I could come in here and I can say Mark. All right. And after I do that, now names is going to be equal to Mark. And that should make sense. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Another way to do the same thing. So if I wanted to replicate this in another way, I could say names dot length equal Mark. All right. You can see there's not much difference in the amount of typing I do, but why does this work? Because from what we had here originally, the length is 4. But remember, it's elements 0, 1, 2, and 3. So by saying names.length, it's going to give it to the size. In this case, 4 will become mark, and both of them will give you the same result. There's really no advantage of using one versus the other. It's just which one you prefer. All right. And, most people, many people will say they like that one better. All right. If I want to remove mark, I can do a names.pop. All right. And just like that, and it'll pop off the last one. So if we just added mark, that's going to be removed. On the other hand, if I come in here, whoops, and I say names dot, what is it? I think it's unshift to put it at the beginning. So if I come through here and say Sally, now I'm going to have Sally over here. And I could have gotten these backwards. I think unshift puts it on, and I think that shift pops it off. Okay. So that would remove the first one. And there's a lot of other things that you can do with this. All right. And like I said, I'm just trying to mention a few of these things just for completeness. But again, I know I'm sounding already like a broken record, but I would strongly recommend that you take a look at one of these articles. This is a really good one. Now, on here, map, filter. We've already talked a little bit about sort. For each is another way of writing a for loop, but you don't have to write all those tests. If you look at this, even if we had 1,000,000 elements in there, it would log all 1,000,000. So what's the advantage of doing this? I could have done this with a for loop. We could have done a for, but then we'd have to or decremented after each run. With a for each, you don't have to do that. The for each is perfect if you just want to work your way through something like that. All right. I want to hit ones that I think that you're really going to need to use. The every and some, yeah, maybe. The includes is used a lot. Notice the method checks if an array includes an element that's been passed in. That may sound simplistic, but remember, suppose you had a list of names and you had literally thousands of names and you wanted to see if a certain name appeared in there. All right. You could do that with an includes. All right. The join we've talked a little bit about already. You may or may not remember it, but it returns a new string by concatenating all of the array elements. All right, so if I got an array that looks like this and I do a join with nothing in between them, it does this. It's the opposite of split that we looked at the other day. All right, reduce is another one that you're going to use. It looks a little weird, but bear with me for a second. What are we doing here? All right, so we're coming in here and we're telling it that we want it to run through this array and we want it thing called, all right, reduced, and we're creating a total. And that total is going to be every element that's in here added up. All right. And we're going to run through that, and reduced at the end, like it says, is going to be equal to 21. So when you want to be able to do something, if we had an array, if you remember that array program we looked at way back in like chapter 3, I think it was, where we had those arrays and you had to do the quarters and the yearly stuff, etc., would have been able to do it with a lot less code using something like reduce. All right. Find is an interesting one because, as it says, it finds the first element that meets your criteria. And if it doesn't find it, it's going to return -1. If you don't want the value, but you want where it is, you can do a find index. All right. Slice we've looked at a little bit already. Reverse, all right. Another way to sort an array, if you want to sort it in descending order, I already showed you one way before with that B minus A, but the other way you can do that is you can do an array dot sort and then immediately do an array dot reverse, because that'll actually take the sort that was in ascending order and reverse it, so it'll be in descending order. Push and pop, we've already talked about. Shift and unshift, we've already talked about. All right. So those are ones that you're going to use quite often. Now, want to hit this article right here. All right. And talk a little bit about this. When I teach the AWD1 course, this is how I start the course out. I don't know if Mr. G is going to do it this way or not. I've not talked to him about it. Plus, we are both teaching the AWD1115 class this semester, which is database-driven website development 2, where we're teaching a brand new way. It used to be Java, and now it's C# web applications using ASP.NET. We're just doing what we can to try to get through that class. All right. But one of the main topics that you're going to cover in the AWD1111 class is going to be React. And the suggestion is, before you learn React, that you have a good understanding of JavaScript. All right. And do you have a good understanding of JavaScript right now? I would say that virtually all of you in the class have a good understanding of basic JavaScript concepts. All right. But at best, you're probably intermediate JavaScript developers. Now, had we gone through chapters in the book that we skipped, 16, 17, and 18, and really 19, all right, had we gone through those, would you be an intermediate developer? No, you would have just been exposed to a few other things. Notice again, Free Code Camp, and that's who this article is by. They've got free courses on JavaScript. They got free courses on a lot of stuff. You know what that ternary operator is. We've already talked about that. That's no biggie. We talked a little bit the other day about this. When you destructure an array, what you can basically do then is you can take an array that right here has got, it's one variable with 3 values. And if you destructure it, you can turn it into 3 different values. All right. It's almost the opposite. Rather than taking something and making it an array, it's taking an array and breaking it up into individual values. Again, why might you want to do that? One of the reasons for wanting to do that is when you use JavaScript, and I've mentioned this several times before, JavaScript is one of the few languages that I know where you can have different types of values in an array. You'll notice here we've got 3 strings, but there's nothing stopping us from, for example, having this be first name, last name, email address, then maybe something like union member or not, and then a salary, etc., where we would have an array that had all those things about a person in them, and then we could destructure it. All right. And they say destructuring saved us some lines of code. And they give examples in here of using this. All right. Now it says here passing props with destructuring. Don't worry about that right now. This is what we're going to be going over next week. So it may not make any sense to you, but I just left it for completeness that you're going to end up using a lot. All right. If you have a career where you're using JavaScript, are going to be the spread operator and the rest operator. All right. As it says, it's a way of going through and referring to what's left in an array by saying ... then the name of the array. All right. That's all you need to really know right now. I just want you to have at least heard about it. All right. Now, I don't know if this is a helpful handbook. I didn't look at it, but they talk about map in here and some other ones. This is another thing that is by Free Code Camp. All right. That's why I said I'm not sure. Okay. The JavaScript array handbook. Maybe this is better than what I showed you before. What I don't like is when they do stuff like this. I don't know if they're trying to be cute, but notice they're using emojis in here. I just think it works better when you use numbers, but to each their own. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's just that's not what I would have chosen. So um, what you're going to use a lot, and we have been using these, are arrow functions. In fact, depending on how Mr. G wants to teach the class next semester, this is a great example right here. When I have taught AWD 1111, you will very rarely, if ever, see me write a function where it says regular functions that way. I'll always use an arrow function. Why? Brevity of code. That's all. Plus, when you start working with the MERN stack, what you're going to see is if you look at existing code, almost always, when possible, your functions are going to be written as arrow functions. It's just another way. So this is saying, create a function called hello. It takes in no parameters, and it's going to return the string hello, exactly what we have here. All right. Excuse me. Now, one of the things that you will be working with a lot next semester are what are called asynchronous operations. Most of the stuff, in fact, I would say virtually everything that we have done this semester has been synchronous. You do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And when you're doing something, if it takes a while, you sit and wait for it to end, and then you go on. When you work with asynchronous operations, what you can do is you can say, okay, I've got this database operation that's going to take quite a while. I'm going through a database with 1 billion records in it, looking for one record. It may literally take up to a minute. So rather than having the program stop, excuse me, by making it asynchronous, what you can do is you can tell it, okay, I'm going to give control back to the program again. It can go on and do its stuff. And then when this operation has completed, all right, we'll come back to it. All right. And one way of doing that is by using what are called promises. And as it says, promises in JavaScript can be compared to promises you and I make. All right. And think about it this way. Okay. It is the end of the semester. You have paid to take the AWD 1111 class in summer. All right. So right now, that class hasn't started yet. You've paid. So you're in a wait mode. So you're pending right now. All right. Day one comes, day one comes, and you start the class. Well, now it's resolved. Day one comes and they've decided they don't have an instructor for the class, so they're going to cancel the class and you're going to get your money back. That's not going to happen. But if it did, then that promise would be rejected. All right. Oh. And as it says, once a promise has been resolved or rejected, you can do and tag a bunch of stuff along with it. This is all stuff that you're going to learn about. I wouldn't expect, if you took a look at what's on the screen right now, that it would make a boatload of sense to you. Try taking a drink. Hopefully that'll help. Now, we have time. We're going to do one of these ourselves in React, and that's using what's called the fetch API. All right. What the heck? What the heck is a fetch API? Well, there's other ways of doing it, but notice what it says here. It takes an argument. It's a URL. So what the fetch does is it goes out to the internet and grabs some information that you need, brings it into your program, and makes it available to your program. Quite often, the way it makes it available is through the use of JSON. So it comes in and it brings it in JSON. And if you remember, one of the things we talked about the other day with JSON was parse and stringify. So you can use that to grab that information and be able to use it in your program. If that makes no sense, don't worry about it, because we are going to talk about it a little bit, and you talk about it in more depth and breadth of coverage next semester. All right. Now, I mentioned before, we talked about um, coming in here and using, when we jump back up here before promises, we talked about arrow functions and array methods. But sometimes when you use these arrow functions, all right, what's going to happen is, again, what you're working with is going to take a while. All right. So if you want something to be able to run asynchronously, as we talked about, where you can give up control until your thing finishes, you can use what is called async and the async keyword. All right. When you use the async keyword, you must follow it with the await keyword. So if we look right here, all right, you'll notice we've got async function. You can call this whatever you want. That's just the name. All right. But what it's saying here is, I'm not going to do this until this finishes. All right. So I'm going to await doing this until this async operation has finished it. Now, I would suggest, you can do whatever you want to do, all of you, but I would suggest that you do look at their in-depth guide, because one of the things students have continued to struggle with over time is the use of async and await. All right. And this guide isn't bad as far as giving you an introduction to it. All right. Now, modules, as it says, what you can do with modules is basically you're building a library of routines. All right. And you can bring them into a program on an as needed basis. You will do this a lot when you get to the React part of the class. All right. And that's it. So with that said, let's do this. Now, yesterday, I did end up writing a couple very simple programs in the C# class. If you watched that thing yesterday, you might say, well, they weren't very simple. They were really difficult, except no, they weren't. There'll be things that you'll be able to write within a week or a couple weeks. They really and truly were not difficult. So if it did scare anybody, whatever, I hope I didn't, but they're really not going to be that bad. All right. So what you see on your screen right here, make this a little bigger. These are the two courses that you take during your second year of the program. They're the third and fourth semester courses. Now, I'm not going to read this to you, but I will tell you, and I've talked to Evan about this, that I think that the explanation that's in here for the AWD1111 course is incomplete. All right. It says you will need to develop modern web apps with Node. That is true. But this is a class about what's called MERN, MERN. And MERN is an acronym that stands for MongoDB, Express, React, which I don't even see in here. All right. And Node.js. So really, it's a class in the MERN stack, and we're going to look at what the MERN stack is in just a minute. The other thing I don't like about this is one of the ways that you can end up writing your code is you can use something that's called handlebars, but it's not the only way of doing it. Now, this may not sound like a big or important thing to you, but we've had debates about a lot of this stuff from day one. And what I mean is, if you list something in here and then you don't teach it, students, in my opinion, have a right to complain. So if I expected handlebars, and believe it or not, since there's one called handlebars, there's another one you can use called mustache. So if I write this, or I read this and I take this class and I want to learn handlebars, but instead we learn mustache, I think I have a right to be ticked. All right. But the point is, it's a MERN-stack class, and much of the work you do will be based on Node.js. All right. So very quickly, I just want to mention, and I mean this less than 5 minutes, that in our book, yeah, I'm still here. The last chapter goes over Node.js. That said, the only part that's in here that's actually really worth looking at is the last 10 or so pages. This inner fine. I have mentioned this to you before. We did this. You may or may not remember, but I can come out here and as an example, this will be probably the first thing that you do in the class this summer. So you can watch me do it now because literally it'll take about 1 minute. All right, if I look in here, and we did this earlier in our class this semester. All right, so on March 1st, it looks like I loaded Node and it's version 18.4.2. I'm going to uninstall it right now, which shouldn't take too long. And you'll notice when you look right here, I mean, we're coming up onto 1 minute. All right. So in less than 2 minutes, it's gone. So how do I bring it back? Well, literally, I go out to, what is it? Nodejs.org, I believe it is. All right. And there's two versions, 18.16.0 and 20.0. Now, Evan can do it whatever way he wants. I always have students download this one. LTS means long-term support. And that means it's a version of Node.js that's been around for a while and has been tested. This release is the same release, but it's got some new features in it that are still being tested. All right, so I'm going to click on here, and it's going to put it down here, and I'm going to say open when done. It won't take long. It's not an exceptionally big file. And there it is. Now it's saying, okay, we're going to do the setup. And I always just have students, you have to agree, just accept every option that's in there. If you want to put it someplace else, you can, but I'm just going to put it there. I want everything. So I do a next. You don't really need this. So I do another next and an install. And now that literally means I have Node.js up and running. If I want to test it and check, I can bring up a command window right here. And all I have to type in here is node -v. And you can see it's running. Okay. What Node does, amongst other things, is it gives you access. We're going to call it, for lack of better words, it's like a big software candy store. All right. And it allows us to use what's called the Node Package Manager. And these packages are pieces of software that have been written by other people that are put out in the public domain. All right. So I can check and see if that was loaded. When you load Node, the package manager is supposed to be loaded automatically as well. So you'll notice there it is. It's not the same version number. That doesn't matter. But now that I've got Node, I've got access to the Node package manager. All right. And what is that? Well, I'm going to go out to NPM. I think it's js.com, but I'm not positive. Yep, that's it. Ugly site. All right. But I can search for anything. Like what? Well, let's say for some reason I wanted to do something with, I don't know, with the Avengers. I'm going to type Avengers in there and I'm going to search. And you'll notice there's a bunch of stuff, not a bunch, but a few things that we can do with that. And now that's not typically what you're going to look for. All right. But the point is, there are literally, the last time I heard, there are over somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million pieces of free software out there that you can use. Now, one of the things that I did when I taught the class is we went through and we did an example project where basically you could put in the price of a house, and what you had to do was you put in the price of the house, how much interest and how many years, and you had to create a mortgage table. Then after I did it, I thought, geez, is there anything in here for mortgage? And when you look, yeah, there's a mortgage calculator and a bunch of stuff out here. Now, I didn't tell that to the class. Some of them went out there, grabbed it, and used that. So you can bring in all of this information. In addition, Node itself has a ton of built-in things. How do I know that? All right, if I go to the docs here, okay, we're using 18.6.0, and the API is the application program interface. So it's all the documentation. So when you look here, now you might look at that and say, well, that's not that much. Yeah, but as an example, if I go to file system, these are all the different things that I can do with files. And you start to see, all right, all the stuff that's in here. Now, why am I even mentioning this to you? Anything that's in here, anything that's in here, all right? So all this stuff is available inherently once, because we've got Node. We can just bring it into our JS files. We can just bring it in and start using it. On the other hand, anything that's from this Node package manager, we have to import it or bring it in because it's not stuff that comes naturally with Node. The reason I'm mentioning that is that's a little bit about what they talk about in here. All right, so how to work with Node.js modules is the built-in stuff. The examples they have in here are, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're probably not ones you're going to use that often. Then they talk about how to use the Node package manager and how to install things. All right, so like I said, I wanted to make sure you at least heard that. All right, then let's go on and do two more things. All right, I've already mentioned what this is about. I'm not going to talk about this one. You can read that yourselves if you want to. Now, if you have an interest, you don't have to do this, but if you have an interest, you can do one of two things. All right, you can go out to YouTube. All right, and you could put my name in there and search my YouTube channel for different things. But just like me, Mr. G, Evan Gudmested, and that's Evan right there. Evan's got his own channel. So you can go out, and if you go to playlists, you can find, for example, let's see, database-driven web development. There's some of the final projects people did last year. But he has something in here for that class. So you can look at his lectures from last semester, if you're so inclined. Or you can come out and look at mine. All right. And if you go to my playlists, if you wanted to see how I taught the class the last time it ran, there it is. Fall 2022 database-driven websites. All right. And what do I have in here? I don't have any idea. All right. But it should in here. Well, imagine okay, I was going to say there's about 100 videos. There's 98 of them. All right. Just more things if you're interested. Whoa, I don't want that guy on here. All right. And then the other thing I wanted to mention before we go into the class is this article. This is another one I provided for you. I don't want to read a link or a lick of this to you. There are hundreds of articles out on the internet like this. All right. Some are better, some are worse, some are longer, some are shorter, etc. But if you wanted to know what MERN is, you can look through this because this is the whole article. What is the MERN stack? What's involved in it? What's used for, etc. The biggest thing about the class, the AWD 1111, 1111 class is the fact that what you're doing in that class is you are using JavaScript, and rather than using JavaScript, all right, rather than using JavaScript to write client-side code, which is what we've been doing for the last 10 weeks or so, you use JavaScript to write mainly server-side code. It's like, well, who cares? Well, the big difference is when you write applications that are server-side applications, you can interact much easier, better with stuff that's out on the internet, and you can save your stuff out onto the internet. All right. Okay. So if you want to know, again, this is the class. You are going to be starting with Node. You're going to jump almost immediately into Express. Now, again, I think Mr. G is going to teach it the same way I do. I don't know. I don't know if he's taught the class before. All right, because the last time I think the class was offered, I thought that, no, I think he did teach it once. Yes, I'm pretty sure he did. All right. But before I went into MongoDB, which is a type of database, I first went through a bunch of examples where I used MySQL. All right. What's the difference between MySQL and MongoDB? MySQL is what's called a relational database. MongoDB is a non-relational database. You handle things in there differently. All right. And again, when I taught the class last, I went into React and probably spent a good month or more on it. All right. I don't know how long Mr. G will spend on it. But if you want a little explanation of what each one of these things in here are, you can look. And you'll notice there's a beginner's guide to React, a complete guide to Node, etc. So you can start taking a look at what's in there. All right. They give you some advantages and disadvantages of using it. Well, one of the big things is there's the average for a MERN stack developer. That ain't bad. All right. Even a new one, the average is over 75K. Now, if I knew I could go to school for 2 years, graduate, and get a job with that kind of money, I'd be pretty happy. And if you do go out, this is Glassdoor they've used, but I've gone out to Indeed and a few other places. I've gone out to Indeed, not lately, but I have. I've gone out to Indeed and put in their MERN stack developer, St. Louis, and found job ads in there anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 a year. Now, of course, you're going to get more if you've got experience. And yeah, notice currently one of the most in-demand things that are out there. So there they went into LinkedIn jobs, and this is what they found as far as the results. All right. And how to learn? Well, of course, they're going to push their own stuff. All right. So with all that said, if you didn't know it, if you cared, or if you didn't care, what I want to show you on here is this. Where are we? Right here and here. Close a couple of these things here. This is the book that's going to be used for the class. It is called MERN Projects for Beginners. Create 5 social web apps using MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. First edition. This will be very interesting, and I'll be very interested to hear what you all think of the book from Mr. G when he gets his reviews, and what he thinks of the book. We have taught this class. I have taught it, I think, 3 times, something like that. We've never had a book for the class. We've just used online resources. One of the reasons that we went to a book is that last semester, both my students and Mr. G's students have said it would be nice if we had a resource, a focal point, especially something that we had where they had maybe created some applications. So we looked online, and believe it or not, there's not a lot of great books on this. There's a lot of bad ones. So we looked at this one. All right. And I don't even know if Mr. G has gotten a copy of it yet. I have absolutely no idea. But when you look in here, what you notice, build a dating app with MERN. Build a short video app with Mern. Build a messaging app with Mern. Create a photo-based social network with Mern. Build a popular social network with Mern. That's the book. So I don't know how much he is going to use this. I have absolutely no idea. And not only that, the book is not brand new. It's a few years old. And you might say, well, who cares? The main thing is, this is what we used to use right here, this deploy the back end to Heroku. That's what we used to all use. But Heroku used to be free. So he's got to come up with a different way for you to deploy some of this stuff. Plus, we're not using, well, he might use Firebase, which is another type of database system. There are literally probably a dozen different ways that you can deploy this stuff, which means put it out on the internet and make it available to other people. All right. So like I said, there's a ton of different ways that you can do that. All right. If you are interested, though, what I did was I went out to GitHub and I typed in APress, and guess what? It came back with 746 results. So I looked and I basically put in the title and it came back under APress, Mern Projects for Beginners. That's the code. Now you'll notice it's not old. It's been updated 2 years ago, which depending on your point of view, either is really old or is not very old for code. But you can bring that particular repo in if you want to and start looking at it. It'll probably make little to no sense, but these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 apps that they create in there. So I don't have any idea, none, how Mr. G is going to teach this course. I'm not going to ask him because it's none of my business. All right. But I would imagine that somewhere around a week before the class starts, you will get a copy or a link to the syllabus. He'll have that in there and he'll start talking to you about what it's about. All right. One last thing that I wanted to do, and it's a little bit repetitive. All right. But you may or may not remember, and I have to find my piece of paper and send it to you. But one of the things that you have to do by the end of this semester is to create your online portfolio. All right. Your e-portfolio. So if I go back here, all right, and I come back in here and I'm going to again put me in there. And I'm going to put in or find my playlist for this semester, the class you are in right now, the AWD1000. All right. Now, when I look in here, I'm going to in here. All right. No, that's the C# class. That's the wrong class. So I want Spring 2023 Web Development Technologies. Now, hold on. I want to click the View Full Playlist button. This is your class. All right. So there are now 114 videos in here, and I'm going to do a search, and I'm going to look for. All right. The reason I did that, and you'll have to look for it, but I explained in there how you can write your electronic portfolio. You're free to do it in Bootstrap. And if you want, you can do it in HTML and CSS. You can add some JavaScript to it, or you can use drag and drop type of packages for it. In here, I explain one of those drag and drop packages. You may or may not remember it. All right, but it is called MobiRise. So again, if I go out to MobiRise, you can download this for free. And this is something that I literally created in that lecture in about 5 or 10 minutes. That's how fast it works. All right. Now, with that said, yeah, that is me and that's my granddaughter. That's how old it is. She's now almost 6. All right. But this is just stuff. This is the kind of thing you're going to do. There are tons of resources out there. And on those tons of resources that are out there, you can watch 10 or 15-minute long videos that'll explain exactly what you have to do here. You can create something like this and you can put it on one page like I've done it. And I thought I had links in here, but evidently I didn't set up the links. And you can make it jump to different places, or you can do it on multiple pages. The reason I'm bringing this up is not to waste my time, not to waste your time, but I want to tell you that by the end of the semester, by midnight, Thursday, the 4th of the 4th of May, which is 2 weeks from today, you have to have your electronic portfolio created, and that electronic portfolio must be out on GitHub pages. So what's in here is an explanation of how you do both, how you can use Mobirise, all right, and how you can upload to GitHub pages. Now, I think the Mobirise is in this part. I'm not positive. I think if I type in Mobius, okay. But, I have explained it before. And like I said, I'm pretty sure in this lecture, if we took a quick look in here, yeah, I'm using Mobirise right there. All right. And then at the end of that particular thing, this is the stuff I show you how to take that website and basically upload it to GitHub pages. All right. That will be mandatory. So if I look in here, just about finished, so just give me a minute. So if I look in here and I come in and I type in, I'm going to look right now for portfolio. This is that living document that you are expected to update every semester that you are here. All right, so for some of you, it'll be the first time you've done this. For others of you, it'll be the second time you did it. If this is the first time you did it, you will put some projects in there, maybe some JavaScript projects, maybe some CSS project, maybe some HTML, etc. And if it's your second one, you're going to come in here and you're going to do that plus your C# stuff. Now, this will have to be updated. This was from the end of last year. All right, but notice it's worth 150 points. And again, it will be due by 11/59/59 Thursday, 5/4/2023. All right. So as it says here, you can use, when I got web authoring tools, you can write it in many different ways. All right. You can test it on many different browsers if you want to, but you must publish it to GitHub pages. All right. And provide an invite for me. If you don't do that, you lose 10 points right away. Plus, if I can't grade it, you lose 150 points. All right. Minimally, as it says, this can be one page or several pages, but there should be some kind of a home page, some kind of an about you page. You should either have your resume in there or a link to it. I would recommend having both PDF and Word printable or copies. You should have a portfolio, and in that portfolio, you will be pointing to the work that you've done. And then finally, a contact form. All right. Again, if you write this yourselves using HTML and the like, you know how to create a form. If you want to use something like Mobirise, they have very simple forms, but they're drag and drop. So as it says, it'll be evaluated on that criteria. I'm not going to read this to you, but you will see this. I'm going to save this right now and send it out to you at the end of the period. That's 50 points. All right. So if you have been in the C# class, 50 out of your 150, and I may change this, but you'll have to put links to your C# program. All right. When I did this one, all right, I didn't put anything in here about links to your JavaScript, CSS, etc. I'll update that. But you're going to get a copy of this, ideally within the next half hour by 9:30. All right. So next week, we're going to start on working with a product that's called React. All right. And when we do that, I was looking last night at different things out here, and I found like this building your first React app, yet another beginner's guide to setting up React part 1 and part 2. I'm going to read a couple of these. All right. I need to become reacclimated or go look at that stuff again. I'm not worried about it, but we're going to start as though you know nothing. And we're going to build the world's simplest React app. The bad news is when you build it, setting everything up for you, two kind of bad things about React. Number one, typically what we use for this, and I'm looking for a better way of doing it, it takes almost 2 to 5 minutes to spin up a project for you. All right. That's one of the bad things. And the second thing is when you create these projects, they're pretty big. They're several meg in size. And we'll talk about why that is. So we will go in on Monday and start talking about what React is. Then we'll build a very simple React project. One of the first things that we're going to build in there won't be the first project, but one of the first projects we're going to build in there is we're going to go back and look at our rock, paper, scissors game and rebuild that in React, because that's something you've already looked at. All right. So yeah, it didn't take that long to go over this, but Grant, any questions on anything?
No, thanks. Thanks for.
Okay. All right. So tomorrow will be a lab. All right. Hopefully that everybody will turned in this week, whatever that stuff was. Again, there will be no homework for 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So what you will be graded on for the rest of the semester, all right, will be any React projects that we do, and we're going to do at least one together, all right, and your electronic portfolio. All right, so tomorrow will be a lab day. I will, of course, be online all day if anybody has whatever. Other than that, have a nice weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.